Turn with me to the book of James, chapter 1. I know it has been announced that several good things continue to happen here at Hampton, and we have people returning, and we're growing a little larger in our assemblies together, and we're excited about that as people feel more comfortable coming out and joining us to worship in person. And we still have several which are joining us right now online, live in a live feed worship, and we appreciate you coming and tuning in on that and joining us, and we're glad that we have that available for you. And also we have several which we'll watch later on, like we did last week. You know, we were on vacation last week. We went to church in Alabama and had services there, and then we hit the road and we brought up Hampton and we watched the service here, and Daniel and doing a great job preaching and all that was there. And so we felt like we were at least connecting with you even though we were gone. And that's wonderful that we can do that. Several good things are happening, but we have been through a year of trouble and trials, I would say. And I thought it was appropriate today to talk about trials in life. James talks about that. When he says this, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. And certainly we have been through a year of various kinds of trials. Troubles and trials, and things have turned upside down, and some people have really faced serious trials during this past year. And some have made it through all right, and some have had little effect, although that would be in the minority, I think. But he said, James addresses this. And if he addressed it, and also Peter addresses it later on, talks about trials and troubles. James and Peter talks about it, so Jerry's going to talk about it. And so he says this in James chapter 1. Count it all joy when you meet various kinds of trials. Someone once said that there are 3 stages in life as a Christian. Either you are going through troubles and trials. And I love the song. Where's Kyle? Kyle, love the song, When the Storm Passes By, because it is that we face times of storms. And it may be that you are in the middle of the storm of life right now. You're right in the middle of a trial. And you said, how did Jerry know this? And he's going to preach on this. How did he know I was going through this? Well, I know someone is. Maybe I didn't know you are, but I know someone is, because that's one of the stages of life. Either you are in the midst of a trial, or you're just coming out of a trial, or, and I hate to say this part, you're headed for troubles and trials. One of the 3 stages of the Christian life. And if you're wondering, am I in a trial or not? You're probably not, because you know when you're in the middle of the trouble and trial. But, like the song says, the storm passes by. And I love so much about that particular song, because it is that he in that song he said the only time we won't have troubles and trials and storms in our life is when our life is over. Don't think that, well, while I'm in my 20s and when I'm young, I know I've got storms of life and times are tough, but you know, when I get old, when I hit 30, you know, then that'll all pass by. And no, it doesn't, does it? You may have different types of troubles and trials when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or even 70s. That's just this world. We live in a world of trouble and trials. It's here. Now, we all face different kinds. There are some physical trials that people face. We talked about on our prayer list, those going through physical problems and such. The trials or physical sickness comes with this part. I've got a particular preacher friend of mine that just recently had a baby who is stillborn. It was a shock to them up to the point of birth. They had no idea. And because this is live feed and it's on the internet, I'm going to protect their privacy but just say that's tough. when things are looking good and hopeful, and you have that expectation of another child, and face that horrendous trial. And sometimes we have physical trials. And sometimes the physical trials lead to mental trials also, to weigh on us. And many families, particularly this family that I had mentioned, they're facing mental trials right now. How to deal with the loss of a child. How to deal with this unexpected loss. And their faith is continuing to show and to grow, but they need prayers. Keep them in your prayers. God knows who they are. You just say, Jerry's friend. God will know. But we have mental trials. Sometimes our trials are spiritual trials. Sometimes we have spiritual trials because of a couple of things. One would be unconfessed sin. Because we let sin weigh on our heart. And that heavy burden becomes, we know sin is addictive. Sin weighs on us like a heavy burden. And that if we don't take care of it, we can face spiritual trials because of that. Sometimes we have these spiritual trials of doubt. I read with interest when John the Baptist is in prison. He sends his disciples to Jesus. And he asks his disciples to ask Jesus, are you the one that we seek? Or do we seek another? John the Baptist asked that. Wasn't he the one that baptized Jesus? And wasn't he the one that saw the heavens open, the dove descend, the voice speak down from heaven? This is my beloved Son. And yet still he said, are you the one, or do we seek another? Doubt. And so when we wonder and have doubts and face spiritual trials, John did also. And so we know that the trials come in various ways, various kinds of trials that we have. My brethren, count it all joy when you meet various kinds of troubles and trials and temptations, as it is. King James says temptations. I think more properly is trials in life. The trials that we have. One of the biggest lies that Satan has is that the Christian does not face trouble and trials in life. Because when we do face it, then we question ourselves. What did I do to bring this on? Why is this happening to me? I know that I appreciate God's blessings, but I don't appreciate the trials, troubles in life. But James says, we count it all joy because there's a purpose. We see here, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, patience, faithfulness. Keep on keeping on. Never give up. He said there's a purpose in our trials, and that makes all the difference in how we face trials. And we're going to see some things as we face trials. And from James, learn how can we make it through the storms when the storm passes by. It hadn't passed by yet. How do we make it until the storm passes by? He said that it produces, it grows us on to completeness, as King James would say. To be complete. He's saying that we are mature, to help us mature. Now we understand growth and maturity physically. No. We understand that as we are born, we can't walk and talk. And it's not expected that we walk and talk when we're first born. And remember that little baby of yours when that baby began to just turn over? Wow. We're excited. We take videos. We put it on Facebook. Well, we didn't have Facebook then, but we told as many people as possible. But now you see it. You see it. It's on Facebook. Look, they turned over. Wow. Has any baby ever done this before? Mine has. Wow. And they began to pull up and they began to walk, and we're so excited. They crawl at first before they walk, and we document every step of growth. And we're excited about it. And we expect this growth. And we're so excited when they can crawl. But, you know, if you had a 20-year-old that was still crawling and couldn't walk, you would say, well, there's a problem, isn't it? What's wrong with them? They didn't grow. They're still crawling. Can't even pull up. They can't talk yet. Isn't it precious when they start talking? Our little granddaughter, 2 years old, she says, Pop. Yeah. That's so exciting. Yeah, Jana came last weekend and she spent some time with Julie's mom, Mimi. And they were eating breakfast at Cracker Barrel. And Jana's youngest boy was crawled up in Mimi's lap. That's so precious. Well, Reese was sitting across the table and she pointed and she said, Mimi. Oh, how about that? That's exciting. Well, we heard about that. She said, Mimi. And she wanted to be in Mimi's lap, and she got there. Yeah. It's so exciting when we see them grow and mature. That's expected. But it doesn't come automatically. And it is that we face troubles and trials to be that completeness. And we see that there's a purpose in trials. That's what James is saying. Trials change us. When a baby is trying to pull up, there's that strength exerted. There's that difficulty to overcome, and they reach that success of pulling up. Trials changes. You have a person, and James talks about that. You have a person, this person is this way, and then trials come in their life. And because of the trials, they are a different person emerging from that trial than they were before the trial. Okay? The trial had a purpose to help us grow and to mature, and we are stronger and more mature and more complete. Oh, to be like thee. I like that song too, because that's our purpose, to be like Jesus. You think Jesus didn't have any troubles, trials in his life? Yes, he did. To be like him, we too go through a process of trials, various kinds of trials, but we go through them. Count it all joy. I want to speak just a minute about joy and happiness, and there's a difference in that. A lot of happiness depends on our circumstances, but we can have joy in spite of our circumstances. Is what James is talking about. You know, when we're happy because it comes from the word happenstance, for happy. Happenings around us make us happy. And when happy happenings happen, it makes us happy. But when happy happenings don't happen, we're not happy. It depends on the circumstances. You go out and you buy a new car and you're happy, right? You go and you get a new job or promotion or something and you're happy. You have a grandchild born unto you and you're happy. And everything's going good. Me and God are just like that. Everything's great and wonderful. And then circumstances happen. That new car that you parked at Walmart parking lot, you go into Walmart and you come back and you see that someone had just sideswiped your new car and drove off, and you see this big scrape down the side. You're not happy because of that, are you? And you know they did it on purpose because your car was way out there. You didn't park it near anywhere and anyone else, did you? You parked it way away from everyone so that wouldn't happen. And you walk out and you see that and you say, I'm not happy. You're up and down of circumstances. But James says, don't let circumstances control your joy in life. My brethren, count it all joy when you meet various kinds of trials and difficulties. Now, no one enjoys trials. You don't go through life and you have these burdens and trials come upon you and you say, I'm so joyful. I'm facing this burden in life, this trial in life. Things are terrible with me, and I'm so joyful because of that. No, he's not saying put on a fake smile, fake it till you make it kind of Christianity. This comes from deep down in your heart. It's unchanging. In spite of circumstances, it's unchanging. We can have joy in life in spite of circumstances. Bad circumstances, we would say. Wouldn't it be great if we had no troubles and trials in life? Would you say that'd be a great life? But Jesus said it rains on the just and the unjust. There's an old proverb that says, all sunshine and no rain makes a desert. There's a purpose in sunshine and rain, blessings and trials in life, that we count it all joy. Someone once said, well, when life gives you lemons, what? Make lemonade. Yeah. And that's a nice saying. When life hands you lemons, make lemonade. You know what they're saying is, hey, just get over it. You just turn that frown upside down, right? You go through life, and even though it is a good saying, and even so sometimes it may be that we can make lemonade out of lemons, sometimes these trials are so tough. It's hard. It's not good. It's rough. And if I could make lemonade out of them, I sure would. But right now, it's just a life full of lemons. James says 4 things we can see to get through these troubles and trials of life. If you look in James chapter 1, as he says, 4 things that we can see. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. Number 1 is a joyful attitude. He said this. He said, count it all joy. Count it all joy. That is having a joyful attitude in spite of the sickness that we've been through, in spite of the pandemic that we've been through, in spite of businesses shutting down, people losing their jobs, in spite of the tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and things, and the storm that we had last night. Julie and I drove here. There were 3 trees that had been across the road. Someone had already cut them up, but we faced storms of life, physical storms, mental storms, spiritual storms. In all this, he says, count it all joy. Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 4, beginning in verse 12, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing has happened to you. Peter's saying, listen, if you're living in this life, you're going to face fiery trials. Trouble is coming your way. Trials are coming your way. But he said, have a joyful attitude. And what he said is, count it all joy. Really? Count it all joy? When you fall into various kinds of trials? You know, some people think that the more suffering you endure, the more Christ-like you are. That you did something that brought this suffering on. Remember Job and his friends? Job's friends came to Job and said, Job, what have you done? All these circumstances have come upon you. You must have done something really bad. Job, repent of that. Get right with God. And Job would say, I didn't do anything wrong. And Job hadn't. He's just showing us that troubles and trials come our way. It's not that God is punishing us because of something that we've done when we have troubles and trials. Everyone goes through them. Count it all joy when, not if. When. It's certain. It's coming. We face it. When we face various trials and temptation. He used the word count it all joy. Most of the time it's translated as count, but sometimes it's translated a couple of different ways. Listen to this. It's translated as the word judged in Hebrews 11, verse 11. And so it is a business term to carefully calculate and esteem. You look at the situation and you judge this, or you count this, or you esteem this, different ways that it's translated. And listen to how the writer of Hebrews says, through faith, Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed and was delivered of a child when she was past age because she judged, the word could have been counted, she judged him faithful who had promised. Again in Hebrews 11 verse 26, the same word count is translated as esteemed. Here it talks about Moses. It says esteeming or counting or judging or knowing, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto recompense of the reward. See, Moses could look down the road. He knew where he was. He knew where he wanted to be. He esteemed it worthy. Count it all joy. It's tough. Trials have a purpose. But we carefully weigh that what we're going through is going to help us and not hinder us. Number one is a joyful attitude in all the trials that we kill. Count it, esteem it, or judge it for a purpose. Number two, not only do we have a joyful attitude, but he said an understanding mind. Look in verse 3 when he said, knowing this. We know. You see, we understand that what we're going through is temporary, and we understand that what we're going through has a purpose. And the purpose is to make us complete, or the purpose is to make us more mature. And when we know that, we can endure with a joyful attitude. Knowing this. I use the illustration of a football coach, preseason, and they're out there with two-a-days, and I didn't play football, so I don't have personal experience with this, but I've read illustrations and such, and he's the guys are out there with wind springs, and they're running, and it's hot, and they got the pads on and everything, and they're going through torment and sickness even there on the field, and going through this, and for the coach to inspire them to keep on keeping on through this physical trial that they're going through, he said, listen, boys, you don't like this right now. Right now, you wake up in the morning aching. You hurt even now. Your side's hurting. You feel like you're burning. You feel like you can't go on anymore. But listen, when we play our games in the season, and when we get to the fourth quarter, and when we're in shape and that other team is not in shape, you're going to see them panting. You're going to see them holding their sides. You're going to see them rolling over. And you are going to be victorious in that fourth quarter because you endured what we're doing right now. Do we see that? They would grow and mature, and they would be able to keep on keeping on because they went through a trial, and they understand that. This has a purpose. This is going to help us in our football season. When we understand, knowing this, he would say, that the trying of your faith works patience or steadfastness. What's going to keep us keeping on? An understanding mind. Understanding that trials have a purpose to mature us. Not only do we have an understanding mind, but we have look at verse 4. A surrendered will. And he used this, but let patience have her perfect work. A surrendered will is let. When we understand that God has a purpose in trials, let us have that same purpose in our life also. There's a story of a young Christian asking an older Christian who he admired and saw such patience and maturity in his life. He asked the older Christian to pray for him that he would have that patience in life. And the older Christian said, yes, I will. We'll have prayer right now together. And the older Christian prayed unto God. He said, Lord, bring troubles and trials and heap them upon this young man. And the young man said, wait a minute. I ask that you pray for patience, not problems. And the older Christian said, you can't have patience without problems. You can't have maturity as a Christian without trials in life. You can't grow stronger with overcoming if you have nothing to overcome. Remember, God has a purpose in trials that we face. That we be mature, stronger, complete, faithful, steadfast, strong. And we surrender to that will. The storms of life come, but the storms pass by. When we surrender, do we say, God has a goal for me that I be more like Jesus? Let me surrender to that will also. Let patience have her perfect work. And then last of all, we see a believing heart. When it says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. To know God is. God is in control. I like the particular verse when we sang as the storm passes by, where it says, sometimes Satan whispers, there's no need to try. Sometimes Satan says, just give up. But we know that God is. And if you look through that song again, you say, we lean upon God through the storms of life, and we don't let Satan have control of our life. We have a believing heart. This is temporary. The pandemic, even though it's been a year, it's not over yet, but it's temporary. Whatever trouble and trial that we have, it's temporary. And it has a purpose. And we know that God is. And God loves us. God cares for us. And we can ask for His help. Help that we can't supply. But there is help that we can supply. We can encourage one another. We can pray for one another. We can lift each other up as we read about Moses holding the staff over with Aaron and Hur upholding his hand. And as long as the staff was raised, Israel won the battle. But he needed help in holding his hand. And so as Christians, let's remember, we all have trials in life. Troubles come our way. We are either in the midst of a trial, or we've just come out of a trial, or maybe you're headed toward a trial. But have a joyful attitude in all things. Our joyfulness does not come in circumstances in life. Have an understanding mind that there's a purpose in what we face. Have a surrendered will. Don't rebel against God. And have a believing heart. All will work out. If we can help you and encourage you through troubles and trials, and I don't know what people are facing, but I know in a crowd this size, we have troubles and trials that some are going through right now, or some are facing, or some have been through. And sometimes when you've been through the storm, you can help someone else who's in the midst of the storm. We're going to continue with James, and James does not leave us without some weapons to encourage us and help us through these trials of life, and we're going to talk about those next week. But if we can help you and encourage you and live in the Christian life and walking the walk, if we can pray for you, won't you come right now while we stand and while we sing?